pledge allegiance
I live to the flag
of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
2. That means you can put your salute down. That's great. All right.
In this picture right here, I wish I could have had this become alive, because when I originally found it, this was like a moving thing, and it showed all the ice, and as it receded, that glacier scooped out land and formed a great big trough. And if you know anything about water, water is liquid. It takes the shape of the container it's in, right? And also is subject to the forces of gravity. So what happens is, because of our elevation, did you know that Sharon is the highest point between Boston and Providence? Mm-hmm. And so consequently, it's even higher than the Blue Hills. Did you know that? It's even higher than the Blue Hills. So consequently, all the water in Sharon flows out of Sharon. So if anything happens to the water in the town, it's the people in the town's fault. All the water flowing out of Massapoag, and it flows out from one place, but there's another lake I want to talk about too. All the water that flows out of Massapoag flows north, going into Canton and joining the Neponset River and eventually emptying into the harbor in Boston. There's another place in Sharon. Have you ever heard of Massapoag Street?
No. Yeah.
Yeah. It's on South Main Street. Not too many people even notice it, but that's the other source of water. Lake Massapoag gets its name from those people who were living here, the Native Americans, and it means large body of water. While Massapoag means, it's another Algonquin or Massachusetts tribal name for a place of deep water and also a place to find shells. When the Native Americans came here, they came to the lake so they could fish, grow food, and use the cedar trees to build their leeches. Those were the homes that they would build, and the cedars were very important to them because now we have pressurized wood, but back then they didn't. However, they learned that the cedar trees wouldn't rot if they put them into the ground, and that was the framework for their home. Remember the cedar trees, because all around the lake there was a great big cedar swamp. And it's important, that cedar swamp, even today. Okay? So they gave the lake its name, which means large water, and they believed that the lake was pure, that it could heal them and make them feel better. When the colonies were formed, believe it or not, Sharon was an industrial town.
What is that?
We don't have any industry now. It's where they manufacture things. So we don't have any factories. There's no big places where people go into a factory and work around Sharon anymore. But guess what happened? Remember all the water flowing out of the lake north? Well, how do you supply or get energy? No electricity yet.
Close. I have no idea.
What?
Water wheels. Look at that.
Water power. Yeah. And so, this is a water wheel. And the water wheel can be either an undershot or an overshot. This is an example of an overshot where the water, you need a drop in elevation or build a dam, and the water would come down and turn the wheel from the top. But an undershot, would have to go coming this way and the wheel would come down. And the reason that the wheel was important, and I didn't even know in the car, actually, was that it would run gears. And gears inside the factory would be like a big grindstone where you could grind flour and wheat. Because there were no factories or stores to go and buy bread. You had to do all of this yourself. You had to grow wheat, mill it into flour, and then you had to take it home and bake your bread in a big oven, which was your fireplace. It kept you warm as well. So, people who were coming here were being given land for work that they had done, or what was called the Dorchester proprietors. That's why Sharon did sometimes look into the history of the town. You'll find it under a lot of names. Dorchester, the grant beyond the great big blue hill, Stoughton, then Stoughton second parish. We had a lot of different names. But because they did things for the Dorchester proprietors who came here in 1630, they were granted land because they didn't have money. So they were granted land, and people who granted land wanted this land right at the base of Massapoag because the water was coming out. And the water coming out of there, they would be granted a privilege. Now, the privilege means that they basically were granted the right to use the water. And believe it or not, there were 6 privileges in Sharon before it hit Canyon. The first one, if you go to the lake where the town beach is, do you know where the flume house is, that little stone structure at the base of the lake?
By the Rotary.
Okay. That was the first privilege. And
So Claire, when we say privilege, that means that people are allowed to take and use the water power from those places?
and build dams
Ah,
and put in water wheels and start making things, manufacturing things. We were an industrial town.
so that would have been a big deal before people had lots of money and electricity and engines.
They didn't have any of those things. So the first privilege was right at that flume house. And they actually widened the base of the stream that was coming out. And that's where bog iron was used. Now bog iron, which is this, was all along the shores and deep inside the lake. And it's kind of boring, but I can see if you might see it too. You know those cedar swamps in China that are all around the lake? Okay. Bog iron is actually iron that becomes part of the water as particles. And then it reaches the surface because all the water that goes in this trough, the Massapoag, is spring water. It comes up from the ground. So when the water in the spring water meets bacteria, so it's good and bad bacteria, it goes through a process of oxidation and it clings to the plants. And as the plants decompose, those fossils are now pulp. And in order to get it out of the lake, they had to scoop it up with boats that they actually lowered the lake to get some of it out, which was later in our period of history when they were making cannon for the Revolutionary War out of this bog iron. But the bog iron was so prevalent that the first privilege was actually to make plows for tilling the soil so people here could have food. It was also used as a sawmill to cut the lumber so they could build their houses. It was also used as a gristmill to grind the wheat and corn so they'd have flour. Then, as it went down the lake, you know where the Ames Street Playground is in town? Have you been to that, like, seen that water coming over the dam? That was the second privilege. Now, the first one was an undershot wheel. The second one was an overshot, which is why you have that dam there and the water coming down. There was actually a water wheel there, too. And that water wheel was used to make, search my memory, it was used to make knives. All kinds of different household knives and things like that. But the furnace.
One of the streets down there is
Knife shop, yeah, but it's
Knife
not
shop,
the
yeah.
right location. This one was
And
on Quincy.
That's
and
exactly
Kings.
right. What's interesting in the town is if you drive around, all of a sudden, if you have an interest in history, all of a sudden you'll see street signs and go, oh, Quincy Road, Edmund Quincy. Yes, he was responsible for the Boundary. Gridley Road. Oh, he was responsible for Furnace Street. Oh, that's where the Revolutionary Cannon were made. If you go into what's known as Cannon Forge, and you'll see Tory Treasure Road. Yes, there was a Tory treasure during the Revolution. There's all kinds of fascinating history if you just use your eyes and drive around. So, yeah.
If we put water down before the wheels spin.
Yeah.
He's tempted.
Now, the Knife Works pond that you mentioned doesn't exist anymore because they widened the stream and eliminated that privilege, and that furnished the water power for the next privilege, which was Man's Mill. Have you been to Man's Pond and seen the drop-off? That was an overshot wheel. And that's where they manufactured cotton ducking, and cotton ducking is probably dating myself, but if you look at a mattress, all the mattresses when I was growing up were blue and white. That was the ticket. And the one up on the top was the dye house for dyeing the yarn. And that wheel that was coming off of it operated lots of different things, like the loom and the weaving and the spinning of the actual thread. And man operated it up until around 1840. It then burnt, so he rebuilt it, and it operated up until about 1900. And then it got replaced. Can you imagine an invention that replaced water power? Right.
Electric dam.
Not yet, but close. Ever hear about steam and steam engines? No? Oh, I think that's some homework to do. You gotta go investigate steam. Steam engines meant that they could heat and make a fire, and the steam as it raised. This is how my house is heated, by steam heat. So, as the steam comes up, it generates power. So you could put a steam engine anywhere. And guess what happened? They did it. They started making factories all over Massachusetts, and the most famous one, or area, town, was the Lowell textile mills. And the reason the Lowell textile mills are important in Sharon's history is, if you were a young girl during that time period, you didn't go to school. Your parents needed money. So what did they do? They sent you to a textile mill. You had to send home all the money you made to help support the family. And these poor girls worked 10-hour days on big looms, weaving cloth. And it was dusty, dirty, and they didn't get paid very much. And the air was heavily polluted with dust. and a lot of them got very, very ill with a disease called tuberculosis. Tuberculosis is a disease of the lungs where it's really, really hard to breathe. Guess what? But at the same time as the little textile mills were going on, there was a man who decided to go to a special hospital in Sharon. It was called the Sharon Sanatorium for the cure of tuberculosis in working class women. It's on Moose Hill, and he said that the reason that they were getting such good results was because of the Sharon's pure air. We had the most ozone, which today is not a great thing because ozone's why we're having climate change. But anyways, back then we called it ozone, and it was because of the elevation up on Moose Hill. And I don't know if I have a picture of the sanitarium right here, but I jumped ahead. The other one on privilege besides Man's Mill, it went down to a number 5, which was right where Deborah Sampson Street is. And I see a lot of people fishing there now. And they had lots of different manufacturing going on there. And then it went to Sharon Pack's company. Do you know where that is? Right on North Main Street. What's the name of the hardware store?
Compound Street.
Barney and Carey's?
Yes.
Yeah, that used to be the Barney and Carey's. The Temple Sinai is
Yeah.
right opposite
Temple
now. The
Sinai
Temple.
is,
That used to be a big.
that was the
box
box
factory.
company. It was also known as Car Works Pond because, believe it or not, people used to come by trolley to Sharon, and that's where the trolley cars were stored. So anyways,
But that was
this is the Sharon Sanitarium. And the women there were kept outside all day. Even in the winter, the snow was falling down. They would put them underneath the buffalo robes, and as soon as they left the porches where they were showered, they were fed really well, and they went into their bedrooms. The whole place was completely disinfected all the time, and they were cured. Now there was a really crafty individual. His name was William Wicks. He was a real estate agent in the town, and he also ran the newspaper. And so when he started hearing about all the wonderful tours at the sanatorium, he realized this was a way to sell more real estate. And so he started promoting Sharon as the healthiest town in New England in which to live. And more people believed it. Consequently, they all started to come to Sharon. And this is them coming because there were now hotels all around it. In fact, the community center was a hotel. And there used to be a steamboat that would take you from the town beach across the lake to stay at the hotel. And this is the hotel, you know where Camp Everwood is? This is the hotel that was there. So there's lots of different hotels, and this is the dining room. And the people who enjoyed coming, the people who enjoyed the activities at the lake started to build homes here. Some in most unusual shapes. This is the Octagon House. It was right where the town beach is right now. And also, this is one of the last industries in town. Also on that town beach was the Boston Ice Company, because before refrigerators, how did you keep food cold? Ice. So when the lake would freeze in the winter, they would go out with horses and saws and start sawing the lake into a grid system. And before they could even do that, they would take poles and pound them through the ice to let the water come up to make the ice thicker and thicker and thicker, and then they would cut it up into cubes, and it would be stored in this. And you know why the ice lasted long into the summer? Because the walls inside were like this, and inside the two walls, there was an outside wall and an inner wall, it's all covered with sawdust, filled and filled with sawdust. That broke down, and it broke forever because of all the sawdust that was inside the building. So, it's pretty much the history of the lake and how it changed over the history of time. But I live at the very end of the lake, and I used to, when I first moved here, I loved to go down and just had to walk to the bottom of the hill and go to that beach right there. I haven't been able to do it for the last few years. Any idea?
Goose poop.
That's bacteria, cyano, whatever it is.
Every single year that beach gets closed.
Which end? Which street are you in?
On Cape and Hill, in the community center
Oh, yeah.
beach.
Right.
Down there, it gets closed because of bacterial contamination. Why is that going on? Any idea?
Kids are eating a lot.
Trash. Goose
Everyone's eating a lot.
trash.
That's what they're blaming it on, the geese and defective septic systems. But what did I tell you was the most important thing about the lake besides it being formed by a glacier and being filled by spring water?
The iron.
Say it again. Oh, the iron, that was part of the revolutionary history, which I skipped over. What?
If something happens to the lake, it's the people in chains.
Exactly. And guess what? Remember we were talking about the iron? How was it formed?
All those trees.
All those trees, exactly. We don't have the cedar swamps anymore. They had been eliminated by people building houses. And so, if we want to clean the lake, the only way to clean the lake is to do something about the situation. One of those things where you look into the past, see what people have done in the past, and when they've got a problem, how they fix it. And so, the people that came before you have created a problem, and now it's up to you guys, not to put too much pressure on you, to help and try and restore the quality of the lake, which is why the Native Americans came here in the first place, because they believed that killing quality.
Bog iron, Paul Revere, Alewife dams. What am I missing now? Issues with the lakes, ways you can help and bend permission. Can we give our host a round of applause for having us here? Oh, and we got the first archaeological evidence of a former hidden iron forge. That's pretty good.